Hey Juan here. The other day I asked in the community tab, what do you think is more important, frameworks or principles? The majority of you answered that principles are more important. I wanted to ask this question because recently I have been hearing a lot of talk and also seeing a lot of talk in different forums or in different communities about frameworks, about which one would be the framework that I should be using that actually will help me do my job. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my thoughts between frameworks and principles and what you should be caring about and what you should be focusing when you are working. And bear in mind, there is no perfect answer for this whole thing. So from my point of view, frameworks have a very good point and a very good place, depends on how you are working and the type of company that you are working. Especially if you are working in a large organization, frameworks are great to establish a common way of working, which it is a good thing when you're in a big organization because otherwise, well, you never know how people are going to work and you can get a ton of different ways of working. And then, of course, how somebody defines a feature might be completely different from one team to another. These things can be okay, but sometimes, well, they might not be that okay. Depends on how experienced people are. Frameworks obviously also help a lot when it comes to keep people and remind them about the different things that they had to take into account whenever they are working, whether it's for prioritization, for design, no matter what, when you are creating products, there are going to be like a checklist of the things to be done in order to get your job done. So frameworks like the Double Diamond or RISE or Kano model are going to help you to prioritize and organize your work or whatever the framework is trying to tackle. And this is actually something very valuable, especially if you want to establish a relatively common way of working within the company. But sometimes frameworks also have a downside that people start just to think about the framework, about the things that I had to be doing in order to accomplish the work that the framework is asking me to do. And although this checklist is fine, it is kind of not reminding me of why am I there? Why am I supposed, or what am I supposed to do as a product manager, as a product designer, whatever is my role within the company? And I see that this is a potential downside, and it's something that I see, for example, when you think about Agile as a set of principles and Scrum as a framework to actually try to translate those principles into actions, is that sometimes people focus too much on what the framework is telling you to do, but knowing why you are doing it. So then you end up being very focused on having daily stand-ups and having retros and having planning sessions, but not necessarily why am I doing this? And understanding why am I doing this and what is the outcome that I want to achieve instead of, in a way, the output that the framework is kind of promoting me to achieve. On the other hand, principles are really good at reminding people why are they doing things. Principles are going to tell you that you want to create products in order to solve a user need or a user problem. In this way, you are creating value for them to solve their needs. And of course, most of the companies out there or most of the products out there are going to be for profit, meaning that you also have to make money to continue running the business, to make better solutions in the future for your users. Meaning that you, of course, had to pay attention to the impact that you are having on the business. And I think that principles are really good to understand the why, but then on the other hand, principles are not that great to necessarily sometimes translate this why into a format or a way of working that can be reproduced easily within the organization. So what do I think in summary about principles and about frameworks? In all honesty, if you are a small company, I think that potentially just concentrating on the principles is probably going to be enough to get the job done and do it in a really good way as well. Frameworks are going to be potentially helping you. Sometimes they can be a little bit complicated and a bit overwhelming. So if you're in a smaller company, I would recommend maybe to take into account or to use some of the simpler versions of the frameworks that are out there. So thinking about prioritization frameworks, think, for example, value versus effort is much simpler to implement than something like RISE. I'm not saying that RISE is no good, it's just going to take more time. And for example, Moscow is a super simple way of organizing and prioritizing your job. And I think that for me, when working in smaller companies, those have been great ways of accomplishing and really achieving the goals and the work that you want to get done. Mainly because you usually work in a small team and it's easier to discuss, to find the dependencies and share the knowledge with each other. When you go to bigger companies, getting that common way of working might not be that easy because you might have tens or hundreds of teams within the company and the ways of working might be completely different from one place to another. Having frameworks in that case is a little bit like training, it's a little bit like having your rehearsals. I don't know if you are into sports, like, well, just training and practicing. The more you practice, of course, the more you will repeat the ways of working and the more you will make sure that you are able to do what you want to do. Frameworks in that way are very similar and they are going to help you to keep that routine and help you to have a way of working that is going to be reliable in the way that is producing potentially the outcomes or the outputs. But one thing that I would recommend you to do, especially if you are in a bigger company, if you are proposing to use some frameworks, is always to describe why are you doing something. So for example, jobs to be done is a great framework to set up the features or the epics that you want to build in a way that explains the output for the customers. But this is a great thing to explain and to also understand for everybody in the company that these jobs to be done, what it's trying to achieve is bring that voice of the customer and the output and the outcome that the customer is going to achieve and bring that voice to the rest of the company. And this is going to help not only the people in product management, the rest of the squad, but also when you're talking to stakeholders. Whenever they see your roadmap, jobs to be done is going to help them to understand what is the value that the customer is going to achieve with this new feature. By the way, do you know jobs to be done? Do you know that framework? If you don't, or if you do, please let us know in the comments. It might be a good idea for a new video. So no matter what you are doing, frameworks can be great for you to work with as well the principles. But remember, never get too trapped either in the principles or in the frameworks. And remember that frameworks are something that are good at this point, but most likely in the future they are going to be replaced and you will have to be ready to learn and adapt whenever needed. And probably the same is going to happen to some of those principles because there's always a new way of working that is popping out there every now and then. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. It helps a lot the channel and YouTube will promote this video to other people that are interested in this topic. So obviously, maybe the conclusion is that learning is probably the most important thing that you can do as a product person in your work and in your daily work, because nothing is the same forever. Everything changes and evolves over time. So you have to make sure that you are able to learn and that you are able to not just learning, but also take those learnings into your work. So if you want to know more about how to learn and how to do this in your work, go check out this video. I will see you in the next one. Remember, stay safe.